It was a quiet, cold night. The rain tapped softly against the windows as Ali walked down the hallway of his small house. Before going to bed, he always checked on his 8-year-old daughter, Aisha. He gently opened her bedroom door and looked inside. Aisha was sleeping peacefully under her blanket, her small teddy bear clutched in her arms. The dim yellow night lamp beside her bed filled the room with a soft glow. Ali smiled softly. Seeing his daughter safe always made him feel calm. He quietly closed the door and went to his own bedroom. The house soon became silent except for the sound of rain and the ticking clock on the wall. Hours later, sometime after midnight, Ali suddenly woke up. He didn't know why. The room felt strangely cold. For a moment he lay still, listening. Then he heard it, a very soft sound. Knock, knock. Ali slowly opened his eyes and looked toward the bedroom door. His heart skipped a beat. Standing in the doorway was Aisha. She was just standing there, staring at him in silence. Her long hair covered part of her face. Aisha, Ali whispered in confusion. What are you doing awake? The girl didn't answer. She only stared at him. Ali sat up slowly. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. Then he turned his head toward the hallway, toward his daughter's bedroom. The door was slightly open, and he could see the faint yellow glow of the night lamp inside. A strange feeling of dread filled his chest, because he clearly remembered leaving Aisha asleep in that room. And yet, she was standing here, right at his door, watching him. Ghost. Ali slowly sat up in his bed, his eyes fixed on the girl standing at the doorway. The dim light from the hallway barely touched her face, leaving most of it hidden in shadow. Aisha, he called again, this time a little louder. Why are you standing there? The girl didn't move. She didn't speak. She only stared at him. Ali felt a strange uneasiness creeping into his chest. Something about the way she stood there felt wrong. Too still, too quiet. Then a sudden thought crossed his mind. He quickly turned his head toward the hallway and looked at Aisha's bedroom door. It was slightly open, just the way he had left it earlier. The soft yellow glow of the night lamp was still shining inside. Ali frowned. Aisha, go back to bed, he said gently. It's very late. Still no response. The girl slowly tilted her head to one side, in a strange, unnatural way. Her hair slid across her face, hiding her eyes completely. Ali's heart began to beat faster. Aisha, he whispered again. Suddenly, he heard something behind him. A soft sound. It came from the bed beside him. Ali froze. Very slowly, he turned his head toward the bed. His breath caught in his throat. There, under the blanket, was Aisha. She was sleeping peacefully, hugging her teddy bear just like before. Ali's mind went blank. If his daughter was sleeping right here beside him, then who was standing at the door? A cold chill ran down his spine. He slowly turned his head back toward the doorway. The girl was still there. And now, she was smiling. Ghost. Ali's heart began pounding loudly in his chest. His eyes moved back and forth between the girl standing at the door and the child sleeping peacefully beside him. His mind refused to believe what he was seeing. This was impossible. Very slowly, he looked back toward the doorway again. The girl hadn't moved. She was still standing there in the same unnatural position, her head slightly tilted, her hair covering most of her face. Aisha, Ali whispered nervously. Who are you? For a few seconds, there was only silence. The house felt colder than before, as if the air itself had frozen. Even the sound of the rain outside seemed to disappear. Then the girl slowly lifted her head. Her hair slid away from her face. Ali's stomach twisted in fear. Her face looked exactly like his daughter's, but something was terribly wrong. Her skin looked pale, almost gray. Her eyes were darker than the night around them. They looked empty, lifeless. The girl took a slow step forward. The wooden floor creaked softly under her foot. Ali held his breath. He didn't dare move. Another step. Now she was standing inside the room. The faint light from the hallway revealed a strange smile slowly forming on her lips. It was not the innocent smile of a child. It was something cold, something cruel. Then she spoke. Her voice sounded just like Aisha's, soft and sweet, but the words made Ali's blood run cold. Daddy, she whispered. Her smile grew wider. Why are you scared of me? Ali couldn't answer. His throat felt dry. The girl slowly turned her head toward the bed, toward the real Aisha, still sleeping beside him. And then she quietly said something that made his heart stop. Can I take her now? Ali felt his body freeze when he heard those words. Can I take her now? The girl's voice was soft, almost playful, but it carried a coldness that made his blood run cold. Ollie quickly moved closer to the sleeping child beside him and placed his arm protectively around her. "No," he said firmly, though his voice trembled. "Stay away from her." The girl standing in the room didn't react immediately. She simply stared at them both. Her dark eyes slowly moved from Ollie to the sleeping Aisha. Then she took another step closer. The air in the room suddenly felt heavier. The small night lamp flickered for a second. Shadows stretched across the walls like moving shapes. "Please," the girl whispered softly. "I'm lonely." Ollie shook his head quickly. "You're not my daughter." For a moment, the girl's smile disappeared. Her face slowly twisted into something darker, something angry. "But I can be," she said quietly. Ollie's grip on his daughter tightened. The real Aisha was still asleep, completely unaware of what was happening around her. The girl slowly walked toward the bed until she stood just a few steps away. Her movements were slow and unnatural, almost like a puppet being pulled by invisible strings. Ollie could now see her face clearly in the dim light. It looked like Aisha, but not completely. Her skin looked too pale, her smile too wide, and her eyes too deep and hollow. She leaned her head slightly and stared at the sleeping child. Then she began to giggle softly. The sound didn't belong to a child. Ollie felt pure terror rising inside him. Because deep down, he realized something horrifying. Whatever was standing in his room, it wasn't human. Ghost. The girl's quiet giggling slowly filled the room. It was a strange sound, soft like a child's laugh, yet twisted with something dark and unnatural. Ollie felt a deep fear building inside him. He tightened his arm around the real Aisha, holding her closer as if trying to protect her from whatever stood before them. "Stop it," Ollie said, trying to sound brave. "Go away." The girl suddenly stopped laughing. For a moment, the room fell completely silent again. The weak yellow light from the night lamp flickered once more, making the shadows on the walls dance strangely. The girl slowly raised her head and looked directly at Ollie. Her smile returned, but this time it was wider, too wide for a normal human face. "You don't understand, Daddy," she whispered. Ollie's heart skipped a beat when he heard her say that word again. "Daddy, I've been watching her for a long time." The girl continued softly, pointing a thin finger toward the sleeping Aisha. Ollie felt his stomach twist in fear. "Every night," she said, "when you turn off the lights, when the house becomes quiet, I come closer." Ollie couldn't believe what he was hearing. The girl took another slow step toward the bed. "I like her life," she whispered. "Her room, her toys, her father." Ollie quickly stood up from the bed, placing himself between the creature and his daughter. "You're not taking her," he said firmly, though his hands were shaking. The girl's dark eyes slowly narrowed. For a moment, her innocent face changed. Something cruel flashed inside those empty eyes. Then she tilted her head again and whispered something chilling. "That's okay." Her smile grew even wider. "I don't need to take her." Ollie felt a cold wave of dread pass through him, because the creature then quietly added, "I just need you to believe I'm her ghost." Ollie stared at the girl in disbelief after hearing her chilling words. "I just need you to believe I'm her." A cold silence filled the room. The rain outside had grown heavier, tapping loudly against the windows, but inside the house everything felt strangely still. Ollie shook his head slowly. "That will never happen," he said. The girl watched him carefully. Her dark eyes seemed to study every movement he made. For a moment, her smile faded again. "You humans are so strange," she whispered softly. Ollie felt a shiver run down his spine. The girl slowly turned her head toward the sleeping Aisha. The child was still lying peacefully on the bed, hugging her teddy bear, completely unaware of the nightmare happening around her. The girl walked closer to the bed again. "Look at her," she said quietly. "So small, so fragile." Ollie immediately stepped forward and blocked her path. "Don't come any closer," he warned. The girl stopped. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. Then the girl suddenly smiled again. "Fine," she said softly. "Let's play a little game." Ollie's heart began to race. "What game?" The girl pointed toward the sleeping child. "If she wakes up," the creature whispered, "and calls you daddy, then I will leave." Ollie frowned in confusion. "And if she doesn't?" The girl's smile slowly widened again, revealing something unnatural in her expression. "Then," she said quietly, "I get to stay." Ollie looked down at his daughter. She was still asleep. Her breathing was calm, and slow. But suddenly, she began to move. Her fingers twitched under the blanket. Ollie held his breath, because he realized something terrifying. He didn't know which one would wake up first. Ghost. Ollie stood frozen beside the bed, staring at his sleeping daughter. The creature's words echoed in his mind. If she wakes up and calls you daddy, I will leave. The girl standing in the room watched him carefully, her dark eyes shining with quiet amusement. Go on, she whispered softly. Wake her up. Ollie slowly leaned down and gently shook Aisha's shoulder. Aisha, wake up, he whispered nervously. The little girl moved slightly under the blanket, but didn't open her eyes. Her breathing remained slow and calm. Ollie tried again, this time shaking her a little more. Aisha, please wake up. Behind him, the creature began to giggle again. The sound crawled through the room like something alive. Maybe she can't hear you, the girl said in a teasing voice. Ollie ignored her and tried once more. Aisha, he said, his voice trembling. Slowly, very slowly, the child's eyes began to open. Ollie felt a wave of relief rush through his chest. Aisha, he said softly. The girl on the bed blinked slowly and looked up at him. For a moment, she seemed confused. Then her small lips began to move. Ollie held his breath, waiting for the word that would save them both. Daddy. That was all she had to say. But the girl on the bed remained silent for a few seconds. Her eyes slowly shifted past Ollie, toward the girl standing behind him. The smile on the creature's face grew wider. Ollie felt his heart pounding violently in his chest. Then the child on the bed finally spoke. Her voice was soft and sleepy, but the words she said made Ollie's blood turn cold. Who are you? The creature behind him began to laugh loudly, because the little girl had not called him daddy. Ghost. The creature's laughter filled the room, echoing off the cold walls like a cruel victory. Ollie felt his heart sink as he heard his daughter's confused voice. Who are you? She had asked. Those 3 words destroyed the last bit of hope he had. Behind him, the girl slowly clapped her hands together, smiling proudly. Well, she said in a cheerful voice, I guess I win. Ollie quickly turned around and faced the creature. No, he shouted. This isn't over. The girl tilted her head again, watching him with amusement. But it is, she replied calmly. She didn't call you daddy. Ollie felt anger and fear mixing inside him. She just woke up? She's confused. The creature didn't seem to care. Instead, she slowly walked closer to the bed. Ollie immediately stepped in front of her again. Don't touch her. The girl stopped only a few steps away. For the first time, her expression changed slightly. Her smile faded, replaced by something darker. You made the rules, she said quietly. Ollie shook his head. You're lying. This is some kind of trick. The girl looked at him silently for a moment. Then she slowly turned her gaze toward the real Aisha. The child was now fully awake, sitting up in bed, looking scared and confused. She looked from her father to the strange girl in the room. Daddy? She whispered softly. Ollie's heart jumped when he finally heard the word. But the creature suddenly burst into laughter again. Too late, she said. The lights in the room flickered violently. The shadows around them twisted unnaturally along the walls. Then the girl slowly stretched out her hand toward the child. Ollie tried to stop her, but something strange happened. His body wouldn't move. He was completely frozen. Ghost. Ollie struggled desperately to move, but his body felt heavy, as if invisible chains were holding him in place. No matter how hard he tried, his arms and legs refused to respond. The creature slowly walked past him toward the bed. Ollie could only watch in horror. Please stop, he whispered helplessly. The girl ignored him completely. Her slow footsteps echoed softly on the wooden floor as she approached the frightened child sitting on the bed. Aisha looked terrified now. She clutched her teddy bear tightly and stared at the strange girl coming closer. Daddy, she cried softly. Ollie felt tears fill his eyes. I'm here, Aisha. Don't worry. But he still couldn't move. The creature climbed onto the edge of the bed and sat beside the child. Her dark eyes studied Aisha's face carefully, almost like someone examining a toy. You're lucky, the creature whispered to the child. You have a nice life. Aisha shook her head fearfully and moved closer to her father. Go away, she cried. The girl suddenly leaned closer to her face. You don't need to be scared, she said gently. It won't hurt for long. Ollie's heart felt like it would explode. Leave her alone, he shouted again, even though he knew it was useless. The creature slowly lifted her hand and placed it on Aisha's forehead. The lights in the room flickered wildly again. The air suddenly grew freezing cold. Aisha let out a small cry as her eyes slowly began to close. No, Ollie screamed, but the creature only smiled. Don't worry, she said softly. Then she looked directly at Ollie. Her empty eyes glowed faintly in the darkness. Soon, she whispered, you won't even remember the difference. Ghost. Ollie screamed with all his strength as he watched the creature place her cold hand on Aisha's forehead. The room seemed to shake slightly, and the lights flickered violently. Aisha, stay awake, he shouted. The little girl struggled weakly, her eyes slowly closing as if something was pulling her into deep sleep. Her teddy bear slipped from her hands and fell onto the floor. The creature leaned closer to her face. Ollie struggled desperately to move, but his body felt heavy, as if invisible chains were holding him in place. No matter how hard he tried, his arms and legs refused to respond. The creature slowly walked past him toward the bed. Ollie could only watch in horror. Please stop, he whispered helplessly. The girl ignored him completely. Her slow footsteps echoed softly on the wooden floor as she approached the frightened child sitting on the bed. Aisha looked terrified now. She clutched her teddy bear tightly and stared at the strange girl coming closer. Daddy, she cried softly. Ollie felt tears fill his eyes. I'm here, Aisha. Don't worry. But he still couldn't move. The creature climbed onto the edge of the bed and sat beside the child. Her dark eyes studied Aisha's face carefully, almost like someone examining a toy. You're lucky, the creature whispered to the child. You have a nice life. Aisha shook her head fearfully and moved closer to her father. Go away, she cried. The girl suddenly leaned closer to her face. You don't need to be scared, she said gently. It won't hurt for long. Ollie's heart felt like it would explode. Leave her alone, he shouted again, even though he knew it was useless. The creature slowly lifted her hand and placed it on Aisha's forehead. The lights in the room flickered wildly again. The air suddenly grew freezing cold. Aisha let out a small cry as her eyes slowly began to close. No, Ollie screamed, but the creature only smiled. Don't worry, she said softly. Then she looked directly at Ollie. Her empty eyes glowed faintly in the darkness. Soon, she whispered, you won't even remember the difference. Goes something Ollie couldn't hear. Then suddenly, everything became quiet. The lights stopped flickering. The cold air disappeared. Ollie felt the strange force holding his body slowly release him. He collapsed forward onto the bed, breathing heavily. Aisha, he cried, grabbing his daughter's shoulders. The girl slowly opened her eyes. Ollie felt a wave of relief flood through him. Thank God you're okay. For a moment, everything seemed normal again. The strange girl in the room had completely disappeared. Ollie hugged his daughter tightly, trying to calm his racing heart. It's okay now, he whispered. It's gone. The little girl sat quietly in his arms. Then she slowly pulled away and looked up at him. Her face looked normal. Her voice sounded the same. Daddy, she said softly. Ollie smiled with relief. Yes, Aisha. The girl stared at him silently for a few seconds. Then a strange smile slowly spread across her face. It was the same cold smile the creature had before. Ollie's heart stopped. The girl tilted her head slightly, the same unnatural way the creature had done earlier. Then she whispered something that filled the room with terror. See? Her dark eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. I told you, you wouldn't remember the difference, ghost.